只有用那个账号密码才能进去，上面那个是账号。
家人进去。一起用，那你要不在哪里？在群里喊一下，就把你的账号用账号密码进去。用账号密码
没对上，一个是那个姜老师的名片，一个是咱们写的。
那你在群里发一下，在群里发一下说，对，你现在你发现在这个，你发现在这个link，对，你发现在这个link到群里面去，发现在这个。你在其他群几个群里发一下那个，发一下新的那个。Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the seminar organized by the Department of Sociology, University of Macau. My name is Jianhua Xu. I'm the associate professor in the department this morning. But very, very honored to invite Professor Zhao Dingxin to give a talk in the department. Professor Zhao, I think, is a name need no introduction. So I will still give a very short introduction about Professor Zhao, and also there are some official introduction about him, and also I will also share some personal story about Professor Zhao. Professor Zhao is a professor in Zhejiang University, and also he was a professor in Chicago University, and we all know that. He is also currently the director of the Center for Advanced Study in Humanity and Social Sciences at Zhejiang University. His research covers the area of historical sociology, social movement, nationalism, social change, and economic development. And his most recent book called The Confucian Linguist State, a new theory of Chinese history, has been published by the Oxford University Press and won the best book of political sociology of American Sociology Association in 2016. Of course, we know Professor Zhao has written lots of books, and I just tell you one personal story about Professor Zhao. Since I came to University of Macau, many students have actually taken my class, right? You will know that Professor Zhao's reading is required reading for all my students over the past 10 years. That's why we know Professor Zhao's work very well. But I would also add to that story by another note. My wife, she's a biologist who took the same major as Professor Zhao when she did his PhD. And she always has thought about what is sociology, and particularly about what's the value of my work. Until one day she read Professor Zhao's book about the power of Tiananmen, and that is the only sociology book she has ever read. And she found, oh my gosh, sociology can do something interesting and powerful. So I actually will start also make my work, my life much easier. And she, of course, she will be more appreciative for my own work. And I think that is some note to my personal relationship with Professor Zhao's work. And actually, we have been trying to invite Professor Zhao to come to University of Macau over the past probably 5 years, and many years. And finally, we got the chance to invite Professor Zhao to Macau. And without further ado, Professor Zhao, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you for the very flat introduction, and also really appreciate this opportunity to come to Macau to revisit and give a talk from my very recent thought about the social science methodology. And actually, I agree, just like I agreed to come to Macau many times because of COVID, It's but not COVID. We can announce it's finished. So later I can come more frequently, and I hope. So the talk structure, mechanism, explanation, and evolving relationship between structure and mechanism after Big Bang, or maybe after formation of the Earth, depends. Well, it won't make much difference. That what's the, and I was informed I will have only about an hour and about then 30 minutes of Q&A. So I don't think I can finish the entire talk. I will just pick some of the key, just the key. So what's behind this, somebody if you read my work, they know that ever since the last 10 years or so, I'm increasingly interested in the social science methodology. And we know that the social science methodology developing, it's developed in the West. Really started in the 17th century in England. That actually, particularly of those people, and it actually started a little bit earlier, people called the humanism, they already started in that's against the Aristotle tradition. And by the 17th century, this kind of induction way of by finding facts through induction become increasingly dominant in England and then spread. And by the 19th century, it become a dominant mode of analysis. But this grammar has lots of problems. And this grammar certainly is highly Western centric. So in this case, and so I want to spend I cannot say the rest of my life, I spend a big chunk of time to study and the strength of weakness of this grammar developed in the West. So, and I wrote a lot of articles, mostly in Chinese, and actually I also wrote a small book and called What is Sociology? 什么是社会学? In that book, and I try to define sociology is not actually in terms of what kind of topic it study. I could define it as a distinctive grammar, and sociology as a discipline as a focus on the called structure mechanism-based explanation. And also sociology, what we do, not only to study different social phenomena, but most importantly, we try to develop, refine, reject different methodologies. That's why in sociology, it's a discipline heavily emphasized the wide scope of knowledge from qualitative to quantitative, from qualitative participant observation, interviews, so on and so forth, and historical archive data. And quantitative, we have like statistics analysis, large data analysis, age-based simulation, modeling, game theoretical modeling, and so on and so forth. There's so many, you can see a network analysis, a rational choice model. So you have so many of those kinds of, the reason was we're doing lots of those kind of things. And we also have macro analysis as micro analysis, and each have their try to develop some distinct way to understand the society. And I found out that all those had one thing in common. They all emphasize the angle of a certain social outcome was shaped by a certain context. And that context is either is a certain structural conditions or domination of the certain social mechanisms that allow the society to develop differently. So that's the book. And in that book, I'm also trying to always consciously think I could be wrong. Because thinking back, before in the West, before the humanism, English empiricism dominated. What dominated in the West in the social sciences? It's scholasticism. And the people over that time would think this is the best way. If you ask Tom Aquinas, that's the best way to get evidence to explain society. Or say for in the China, in the Manchu Qing dynasty. And if a time you ask people in the 18th century or early 19th century, what's the best way to, what's the best avenue to understand society? Scholasticism, 考据学. So it could be thinking back, there's no way we need to understand society this way or this way. So in previously, most people are wrong. How could we this time we sociology create what we call structure mechanism explanation? It could be just a bunch of scoundrels and create a monopoly of discourse in a certain manner. A few hundred years later, it's entirely nonsense. Then, because of this kind of tension, I just go further to check, even like in my, that was also in the What is Sociology, 什么社会学 in that book. I can also discuss with lots of professors in Chicago, and somehow found out we had only two intrinsic or generic narratives. If you become successful, and in order to explain why would you become successful, become big officials, or become major university professor, whatever. In the end, you found that there's only two narratives. One, you build a chronology, found a critical turning point. Before that, because some events before and after you become a changed man, a changed person, you get a new opportunity, you become successful. And that's also, you found a grammar which is distinctive for historians. But another way that if you become successful, often that they would explain about certain structural conditions, because your father is rich, because you live in the 学区房, and which is either you're lucky or your parents get lots of money, bought an apartment in the 学区房. Or so basically try to explain like certain structural conditions, like a 孟母, Manch's mother, and she's a certain sociologist. That's why 孟母三择邻, and she tried to found a good neighborhood 3 times in order to educate Mengzi, Manchus. So, and certainly from today's sociology language, with Meng Mu understand neighborhood effect. so that's actually, this is two narratives, and I actually feel satisfied. You see, this is our generic two grammars. You cannot be wrong. It could be still, it could be actually, even our generic discourse, and doesn't be that, it doesn't mean that this is the best way. So, and also I try to solve this problem. So by comparison between nature science and the social science to see what's the difference. In the end, I found out to argue, yes, so social sciences focus on structure, mechanism, explanation. But deeply, I'm not satisfied. And I'm always in another side of the brain, I think I just a bunch of scoundrels. I'm one of the creator pattern of discourse. Say this is right. So, but this kind of urging was behind me, and this kind of urging was still because if anybody reads what is 什么社会学 that book, and you can see what today's talk is not there, is not there. So, but on this kind of unhappiness, then in the end, when I finish what is 社会学 that book, and I start asking myself what I was doing. So I asked the first question: since you mean myself argue that sociology or social science has to focus on structure, mechanism, explanation. Let me ask myself: is it the mechanism determine the structure, or structure determine mechanism? Once I ask these questions, of course, it's easy to look at my own book. What I was doing in the last 20, 30 years. I found out really enough. I sometimes do this way, sometimes do that way. For example, my first book, 1989 Student Movement book, I essentially identified a set of structural conditions. China in the late 80s was increasingly relying on performance-based legitimacy. And was actually faced a very weak development of the intermediate organizations or associations. And but that kind of structural conditions really shaped every major mechanism, and those mechanisms was highly conducive, not only to shape its rise, but the outcome of the 89 movement. Okay, structure, shape, mechanism. Then my Confucian Legalist State book, with that book analyzed 30,000 years of Chinese history. But my intellectual ambition was really try to create a theory that explained the social change of mankind. Because you study a civilization for 30,000 years. But in that book, actually, I start with my biological background as the human chimpanzee plus ideology. And we know that the chimpanzee are bonobo. They are economic animal, political animal, and territorial and military animal. Bonobo is more kind, chimpanzee is really even. So, but except they're not ideological animal. They're not going to get rid of, if some chimpanzee come to us, we just get rid of them, and we claim we win because we had the truth on our side, or because this is the land, is our ancestor land, ancestor territory. They just defeat you. So human just, but then actually because this, so human in a way is ideological, political, military, and economic. And I just through these four natures, each entail different mechanisms. So if you involve in economic competition, winner-loser criteria is very clear. In order to win, you have to produce more at a low cost. No. And economic competition also encourages individual-based rational decision-making for private company or for themselves. Not like us. So I just develop a set of mechanisms associated. Then actually history, just a monkey which is human, an overdrunk monkey, jump on the piano with 4 major keys, and they dancing like crazy. They overdrunk. Everybody believe we claim what we produce best music. That's what the history is, a cacophony of that. But on the other hand, history still there's certain patterns. At a certain time, each of those components, if economic competition become dominant, it could be associated with some economic actor will become important. And some mechanism associated with economic competition becoming more important. And so that will actually shape the society at a given space of time. Certain social mechanisms will become more important. A certain social structure will become more dominant. So in the second book, it's a mechanism, structure, outcome. I found, my God, I can't go circular, So then I started reading other people's book. I found these two fashion of a narrative. It's almost like, it's everywhere. And of course, some professor had a certain style. Somebody always mechanism structure. Somebody always a structure mechanism. And not like me, I'm a more opportunistic structure mechanism. So by then, I come out with a model like this. It could be structure derived mechanism, mechanism derived structure, structure derived mechanism. But then the red part, what's the end? What's the beginning? And so it looks like it's almost a structure mechanism. If you go on structure mechanism, but some mechanism can derive structure, it's almost, it's intrinsically with structure mechanism relationship, time-based. There's a history in it. So this is my, and because think that where's the end, where's the beginning? And at the end was really benefits from my experience as a professor, as a chair at the Zhejiang University. Actually, I still am. I'm completely, totally disgusted about what happens in China. And this kind of very disgusting experience, and many people think it's not worthwhile, but actually to me, it's so fun. Because as only then gave me to see something I'm totally not able to see if I don't come back to China full time. Because I found the importance of many what I call the total ad hoc mechanism was so dominant. And the mechanism was like, say, for example, I hear writing Chinese, like the loopholes in, 走后门送你 tattletale, sowing discord, pretend, and all those, and also Chinese very increasingly complex called the 顶层设计, which is, and it's all, but until the inside those kind of designs, all those kind of 无厘头, and those are totally nonsense, and if we see it cannot be successful. And this is really shocked me. It's not even in 1966 when I left China, it was not like that. Some people vomited because as a scholar, a scientist, whatever, we're looking for general regularities. Some kind of regularity either called the price mechanism or free ride problem or anything. That kind of regularity, it's in a way, it's called a portable. You can apply for different situations. And those particular regularities, can only work in this causality, can only able to work in a very narrow, specific situation. And that's why exactly we scholar called the ad hoc mechanism. So I found that the domination of extreme domination and prevalence of ad hoc causality in Chinese life, that allow me to realize, my God, I know where's the end. The end is the action produce structures, produce mechanism, eventually become human, particularly individual action or state action produce mechanism structure. And the structure and the shape of social action till the traits of the structure mechanism causal web that at the most causal ad hoc mechanisms. That's why, sewing this God, this God, those things become irrelevant. But I don't know what's going on in the beginning. And that's my nature science bad training. At the beginning, I can just look back. What happens before human? What happens before rise of living thing? And I found out in the end, everything's of course before the Big Bang. I think there's also structural mechanism relation. There must be something, but we don't know. I don't care anymore. So I just actually everything's the Big Bang. You can see that a certain structure mechanism structure development follows certain patterns. This is the pattern which I described here. And once I had this model, I can realize I was so wrong. Quite a few things are right in the what is sociology become wrong. And not only so, and also many of the understanding of the science, particularly like some great scholars think there's in the science there are different modes of explanation. There's a mechanism-based explanation. There's a law-based explanation. There's called a covenant law-based explanation, and there's mechanism-based explanation. And all my early writings, my early understandings, my early writings try to distinguish between time-based analysis and structure-based analysis. Try to explain explanation and interpretation. Try to, sociology, so philosophers, social sciences try to distinguish different mode of explanation. It all become not necessary, become nonsense. So, and also, so that what's this this talk? I mean, again, I'm not going to finish. So I just pick a few important things. Is about I found out 20 plus law and regularities associated with that model, and this is more important. And those law and regularities, to me, give a revolutionary relook of the entire early understanding of the difference between nature science, different interpretation between and the explanation, so on and so forth. And also, in this talk, I'm going to emphasize and give a few more examples on China's tail-heavy phenomena. So what they call the tail-heavy phenomena is a kind of phenomena, and increasingly you can see those most ad hoc mechanisms dominant, prevailing in every aspect of society. And because I'm a sociologist, so I'm not spend lots of time on those early part of the model. But on the other hand, so I think because format is no longer line up very well. But anyhow, I'm not going to, because essentially, suppose we after Big Bang, you see, immediately after Big Bang, in the very first a few split second, there's something happens, and that's when some people, it's so short, we call it Planck time. In the Planck, that's like 1 out of 7 million split second, and that period has lots of changes in the come out of 3 elements. We know that the elements which is oxygen, nitrogen, and a few Li, and one is the 3 or 4 elements, which they are not real elements because they are actually, there's a, I don't know how the English, they are Lizi, not Yuanzi, because they are not able to capture electron. Because at that point, the whole Earth, the whole universe was so dirty, sky not clean yet, so that, but when the sky gradually cleaned, the universe after Big Bang, the temperature went lower, and then you can see the formation of more and more chemical elements which actually is 4 elements. They have a core and they have electron. And that's how to reach the stage, certain mechanisms reach the stage I call the chemical elements stage. But those chemical elements, because they had a certain structure, because if you either, you have to understand middle school of chemistry, or you can see different chemical table with each element associated certain mechanism. They had a different propensity to marry with different elements, form different inorganic chemistry, like water, alcohol, so on and so forth, and form different structures. And this is, I call the stage of inorganic chemical structure. And then on the Earth, this period is the lot about 50 million years, 100 million years or so. Now you see rise of some chemicals, and those chemicals was able to reproduce themselves. Like today we call it a virus or something. So some chemical elements, they were able to reproduce themselves, let them produce. And this are called stage are called self-producing biomass, organic chemistry. Human, of course, is self-producing biomass. You're just biomass. So this stage but in this stage you see the development of lots of new mechanisms. In order to produce themselves, in order to let you survive, you found out at this stage, dominated by many, I call the negative feedback mechanism. Because in order to let you survive, finish even this single lecture, listen, you need to mobilize millions of different negative feedback mechanisms. Because otherwise your temperature, if you're sick, for example, if you run, you become very sweaty. And this is because if you run, you are not sweaty, your body temperature goes high, eventually all your protein in your body will burn down. If like this morning, and in the morning is okay. If I had a talk in the afternoon, usually I almost refuse to eat lunch. If I eat very little. Why? Because the negative feedback mechanism. I have a high blood pressure. I have a high cholesterol, but I don't have diabetes yet. If you think I don't have diabetes, so there's one problem. If I eat more, and the more I eat, the more my blood sugar level will go top. But to the certain level, my body will produce an enzyme called insulin, lower my blood sugar level. And if I eat too much, and my body will produce a lot of insulin, so to push my blood sugar level down to a certain thing. After lunch, I want to sleep, get very dizzy. So, and those are, this is humans, I'm, of course, animal is the same, animal, plant. Say, for example, lactation. Lactation, it's by time and not before human, all we call the mammals, they start feed their baby. Lactation was actually it's a positive feedback mechanism. But this only in human animals, whenever you see positive feedback mechanism, it will produce for a particular purpose. Lactation, for example, you do need the baby suck milk. Not only mom feel physically comfortable, soothing, but also through that mom start produce an enzyme, a lectin, so that mom able to continue to produce milk. But if the mom is a career mom, need to stay working for the factories 8 or 10 hours, and mom did not understand. Mom feel the stomach, feel the breast feel pain, somehow, breast feel pain. Somehow. She forgot to get the milk out. In the evening, no milk, because lactation produced milk have to continuously get signal from baby's suction. Otherwise, you finished. So, and the more suck, the more you produce milk. But in human, you can see in your body, in animal, in biology, in insect, they have lots of those positive feedback mechanisms. They are designed for the particular purpose. Otherwise, the society, but in biology, in animal, in plant, it's all dominated by negative feedback mechanism. Because in order to keep anything alive in a highly unstable environment, you need lots of negative feed mechanisms to readjust your temperature, your body temperature, so on and so forth. And also evolution theory, which is it's a Darwinian theory of evolution, regardless from 19th century's understanding or 20th century modern genetic understanding, are all a negative feedback mechanism. Well, evolution theory was what we call the governing law. It's a govern the rest of the mechanisms in biology, in animal, in plant, in bacteria, so on and so forth. So that's why when I was a biologist, we're looking for biological mechanisms, follow the hint of evolution theory. We know that if the animal have this kind of behavior, and this behavior must be developed through evolution. So what's behind the structure, behind this mechanism, where's the function? What's the function? We sometimes guessing the mechanism first by establish hypothesis, then do very meticulous experiment to prove or disprove of my hypothesis after you get wrong. Sometimes it's other mechanisms. So that's evolution, but that's because no animals or plant can violate evolutionary principle. You violate, this species are going extinct very soon. But when to develop this new stage called self-justifying biomass, that's human. Human have self-justifying biomass. Where the human. But then actually that's what I call Homo span. You can see that at this stage, all the positive feedback mechanism become dominated. So in a way, in 19th century, because in the end, there's different kinds of theory about evolution, and in the end, what dominates is a Darwinian's negative feedback mechanism center theory of evolution, not Lamarckian sent the positive feedback use and disuse. If the more you use a muscle, your children get more muscles, and those kind of positive feedback oriented evolution was actually disfavored. But nevertheless, human culture development was exactly positive feedback. So, and that's why human behavior violates lots of evolutionary principles. No animal wastes food, but human waste lots of food. So, and that's actually, if I'm a biologist, so when I remember when I was undergraduate still, we predict human maybe only from last time out of Africa to now, maybe about 200,000 years. So what we, of course, we get some gene from Neanderthal, from Beijing people, London people, but those are all extincted. We're not, but what we current human is out of Africa is about 200,000 years ago. This is what we today. So, and today we already messed up the Earth to this level. Maybe another 10,000 years, we disappear. Or even though we create a most wonderful, experience in the Earth, but on the other hand, our total lifespan can dominate the Earth. There's no way you can compare with dinosaurs. There's no way we're going to do this. And when I was undergrad, we always calculate what will happen when human kill themselves. Human instinct just we mess up things, and the Earth is still there 4 billion plus years, and there's a chance enough time for several times for the Earth develop human-like animals of different kinds. We calculate which species most highly likelihood, so on and so forth. So, but then it suggests you can say that's tail heavy. You can write I already mentioned, and in that process, what's interesting. And of course, this is what overall after Big Bang, you can see, at least on the Earth, you can see the net entropy, which the amount of information was continued class. And today it's still on the rising because rise of information, rise of ChatGPT, GPT-4, so on. So of course, it's still there's Chinese Baidu version shit ChatGPT, terrible. But on the other hand, it's still information. It's still information. So. But it could be one day collapse, and collapse goes up again. We do not know, but certainly it's still on the earth, it's still on the rise. Even though increasing, you see lots of cacophony of noises, but there's still information. So, and I hope you already know what is the difference between mechanism, ad hoc mechanism and general mechanism. But quickly to give examples, like say, for example, for price mechanism is a general mechanism. And we call the general mechanism, mainly you can apply this mechanism as long as you have an exchange of goods because there's some surplus. Then price mechanism works. If in a society, like on the planned economy, you suppress the price mechanism, don't let it work. We plan. But they cannot plan so well. What we do? Price mechanism will come back through backdoors, through shortage, through privilege, through 走后门, through actually black market, they will come back. And so, but on the other hand, like tattletale certainly is an ad hoc mechanism because it's only going to work if allow a tattletale this kind of, through tattletale I get the benefit. And this kind of mechanism only work in a very weird environment. Only work in a very narrow, so that's not, you cannot apply. Tattletale is a general mechanism in human society is nonsense, So that's some mechanism was only working in such ad hoc conditions. We call ad hoc mechanism. Of course, ad hoc mechanism and general mechanism form are continuing. If you compare price mechanism with Newtonian law, and you found the price mechanism, it's very ad hoc. It only works in human society. It only works when human had a surplus and start exchange. But Newtonian laws works everything, in a much more wider scope. So, and of those 20 plus relationships I found, I wanted to only focus on a few. But for the sake of time, then I need to go on to discuss this tail-heavy phenomenon, which is really interesting. So that's many of the Chinese, and that's why actually how to make silence a voice, how to make it this most disgusting experience, most exciting moment. That's actually many of those you young students, you must be confused somewhere. This is the best. Never lost your heart. Never lost of any even the most disgusting, boring, terrible opportunity. So, and that's at first, of course, you don't need to mention, they form a mutually constituted chain, develop in the direction increasing the complexity and ad hocness, which I already mentioned. And structure created by the general mechanism will have a wide and more sustained impact. And of course, I don't need to mention that Newtonian law had a much wide impact than actually, say, for example, evolution theory. It had impact on human, non-human, and the physical world. Not like evolution theory only works in biology. So, but on the other hand, I want to give a more China-specific example. Say, and the example was actually, I'm not going to get background. That was the ideas from 2008. Ronald Coase organized a conference in Chicago. And in the first, Zhang Wuchang claimed how Chicago economic thought was important for China's success. And in the lunch table, I remember that Gary Becker, Stigler, and that's Dr. North, the 3 or 4 Nobel laureates asked me, could you tell me that, is that we are so important? Because they get confused. They thought that they cannot be so important. I told them that essentially Deng Xiaoping did everything violated the principle. Nevertheless, use some elements of yours that become successful. And then they asked me, so could you tell me what's the gist of Deng Xiaoping's economic success? And that's what I produced at the lunch table, and just tell them And when I tell them, it become increasingly found out what I tell them, I should finish the article. It's really important because I told them essentially 6 things. And the key to successful China reform is Deng Xiaoping rely on either rely on general mechanisms or rely on something to attack, try to prevent the negativity of the general mechanisms. Deng Xiaoping never rely on specific. That's why, for example, first, Deng Xiaoping say, allow some people get rich first to mitigate the free rider problem. Otherwise in the China during Cultural Revolution, get more, produce more, doing less, you get same pay. Nobody want to work hard. Everybody believe you work for communism. I can wait. So, and the second is that using no debate to mitigate the problem caused by general mechanism of ideological competition has no clear and winner criteria. If this is a very important mechanism, as mankind maybe forever cannot understand. Because when you see rise of third wave democracy, mankind usually think it's the end of history. Whenever the ideology, the value you like become dominant, you will think because 真理战胜了, yeah, truth. But actually, if half is Catholic, half is Protestant, if it lasts debate, there's no end. If there's major conversion of a debate, usually maybe you are simple-minded people because my side hold more truth. If people like me, I will sit on the table, whether these people on the gun, there's a gun, or those people already paid the money. They are the, So those people are poor. I don't know how to translate poor in English. So that's why whenever third wave democracy rise, I immediately think this is a U.S. result. Even though I'm liberal, I like democracy, but the current rise of multiple democracy, we are so strong. It was a result of a U.S. solo domination, not because the idea is good. It doesn't matter, So, but Deng Xiaoping know this. So Deng Xiaoping in 1970, no debate. That's really important. I told them that because no debate, that China created such period, nobody even know who are the winners, who are the losers. In the process of reform, even I'm the very conservative guy, my son or daughter get very rich, and he changed his mind, And while in Soviet, there's a lot of discussion of the reform. They call it perestroika, but on grass notes, but no action. So before the reform is started, people form different clear interest groups. So the third is that, primary against leftist, 防左为主. And this I told them, that's very important mechanisms. Any kind of parties or organizations are more likely to hijack by the ideology they claim to be committed. So if you're a liberal party, you really should against the liberal scoundrels. If you're a religious party, you should really against those religious scoundrels. See, if you're a leftist party, you should really against those leftist scoundrels. Use language to hijack you. And Deng Xiaoping understands this. This is a general mechanism. Deng Xiaoping wants against this general mechanism. And the fourth, using price mechanism to regulate the market. I don't need to mention. The fifth, use for socialist principle to mitigate the negativity brought by the market. But then all those mechanisms important always changing. And Deng Xiaoping touch the cross the river by touch the stone really means that each of those mechanisms creates some problems. Now state as actor should keep a certain autonomy. Just as go, which negative side mechanism become too important, we change. So this is in a way, in the mankind, I never see a top, just 顶层是 top design as smart as this. But of course, I did not say I told them because they really get mad because they say you create a mythology, not a real person. They just asked me why will you think, this is what Deng Xiaoping, why could Deng Xiaoping, he's human, not genius. And he's not human, he cannot be that smart, they said. Then of course I tell Deng Xiaoping's story, particularly his story during the Cultural Revolution. I remember Doug North attacked, I said, no, if I put you as a Nobel laureate, sent to middle of nowhere to the coal mine, let you work over there. But on the other hand, it's not work for half a year. There's a chance you can work there forever. So that completely changes your way of calculation. You may not get then. But on the other, 2 years later or 3 years later, I let you out. You cannot even expect this. There will be the chance. Then you rewrite your theory. Can you really believe this kind of transaction cost? Because the lower the transaction cost, British become more British economy becomes successful domination. I think you could be completely changing your idea. And then he said, my God, that's the case. So that's actually, you can see, I'm not that smart. In 1960s, I bought a book by Romania Prime Minister Manescu. And when I bought this book, I was so moved, excited. We young people over 20s, around time we discuss, that's why Romania is such a great country. You can see, we have the leader. Our leader only touch the stone by touch the cross leopards. They had the leaders create such a beautiful theories with so many mathematics, so many flow charts and these careful designs. Until a few years later, this guy got a life sentence. His boss was killed. The Romanian president, and so that's how I'm actually learning my own lesson. So I learn my own lesson. That's why I cannot see society from an engineering perspective. Human act with certain interest. So that's why I see the fundamental wisdom of Deng Xiaoping closely refined. It's not like what you think, because you are not able to think. If you really understand these insights, of course, Deng Xiaoping himself may not know. I don't think he knows this, but he just get this fundamental insight. That's so. So here, I go back to a few things I think I need to mention. And the sixth, for example, is very important. And they say in philosophy of science, they think there's three kind of explanation. And usually they think in physics, the explanation is a law, like Newtonian law. And there's also covariant law explanation. And in biology, you use covariant law. In biology, that in all the living things are governed by millions of different mechanisms, but those mechanisms cannot violate evolution theory. So that evolution theory is called a covariant law. And in social science, and actually, there's only a mechanism-based explanation. And this kind of distinction become no longer necessary. Newtonian law is also a mechanism. Evolution theory is also a mechanism. Just the mechanism, how much the mechanism was sensitive to the context. Newtonian law, we call the law because this mechanism are not that sensitive to the context. As long as the speed not reach the speed of light, as long as the particle not as smaller as basic elements, it always follows Newtonian law until the speed reaches the speed of light, and which is every second, which is 300,000 kilometers. And until it's not as small as those basic elements, it works. That's why Newtonian law usually working for everything except a few physical domain, which is that were governed by Einstein equation, so on and so forth. So, for the price mechanism, we can only call the price mechanism. We cannot call the price law, because in order to let the price mechanism work, you need people are perfectly rational, and you are not. You need the information flow is 100% no barriers. You need all the transactional cost with zero. By transaction cost, it means that everything can be distorted price mechanism, which entire society disappeared. Or in the transportation involve no cost. So in a way that in order to let the price mechanism work perfectly, you need a lots of very very serious, almost impossible to reach conditions. So let the price mechanism. That's why today this world on the market economy, price mechanism certainly become much more important mechanism than it was in the past. But not because this mechanism become more important, or this mechanism become actually context become weakened. It's because everything's early modern Europe, they actually adopt institution arrangement, make this mechanism important. Allow those econ people, which my colleague get lots of Nobel Prizes, and these people essentially think a price mechanism is the law. New economics is just a mistreat a mechanism as a law. That's it. So, and so these are just a mechanism sensitive to a different context. And the more with this development structure mechanism relationship, the later the mechanism emerged, appeared, and the more that mechanism was sensitive to the context. There's no difference. And say, for example, I want to say another thing I want to mention. Oh, and also, in the past, I said there's a two way of tell the stories. One's a time-based narrative, cannot define history. One's structure-based narrative. And under this paradigm, I found that this is wrong. Because in the time-based narrative, you found a turning point, found an accident that shaped history. And many people like my colleague, like Andrew Albert, the procedure sociology, so another colleague got time, write about logic of history, like William Su. And they all really try to, but on the other, if you read their book, they actually were emphasizing some ad hoc mechanism was more important than general mechanism in shaping history. It's just the best. Your action create a causality, create a very ad hoc mechanism. And if an action of certain people, an ad hoc mechanism can be created such a huge causality, you should not argue like William Su and Andrew Albert, procedure sociology, time matters, process tracing. You should emphasize an extreme uneven distribution of power. Say, for example, when I went to countryside, worked in the factory for 80 years in the Cultural Revolution, that's only certain ad hoc decision of Mao. And that Mao's single decision created 70 million people's life become structurally different. His single decision become a structure. Why? Because uneven, highly uneven distribution of power. It's a structure, So I'm not good. There's lots of complex issues involved, but I just give a very simple, more understandable example. And say, for example, in the past, I also try to distinguish the two narratives between anthropology and sociology, and they tend to emphasize interpretation. We try to more emphasize on explanation. I found that I was wrong. Say, these people are also heavily using structural mechanism explanation, but on the other hand, because these people are silly, they do not understand. Say, for example, girls, cockfighting. Beautiful story, thick description. I say for people in the West cannot understand unless you deep read in the context. That's because his beautiful writing cheats on you. People of those people, the Balinese people found this cock obviously going to win, but of people of my community prefer bet on the losing cock. He say this, a beautiful story. But on the other hand, because I was involved in Ningxia in those many heavily dense, almost like black society kind of, in those societies, if I'm an instrumental rational, bet on the winning cock, go back, somebody will kill me, I'm excommunicated. This is very clear. Girls think people in the West cannot understand. Actually, I could train the undergraduate, I train the high school to understand people. People West also understand this. They don't call the thick discipline, that's it. But for the sake of time, girls, people like Ed Said, people like Turner, people like say James Scott, they actually, you can see behind the as if they interpret, they emphasize certain, so like everyday resistance, which really is a structure analysis of those some people. They don't have power. they don't have the capacity to manipulate language and discourse. They're not respected. They don't have a chance to mobilize. If they have grievance, they're not able to do anything. What they can do? Every resistance. So the structure creates certain action, certain causal action. So, and anything I needed to, because of sake of time. Okay, this is also important in a way. With the emergence of the self-adjusting structure, which is human, not only the structure, mechanism, and relationship become increasingly exponentially prolific, but also the structure become our constructions, understanding under certain perception, philosophy, ideology, and research questions. Now, this is very important. Before the rise of biomass, the structure had even though 名可名非常名 any structure is a human's understanding. When you try to analyze some structure or mechanism in the biology world, and that is also a construction. But this construction, the ontological base is much more solid. If you don't accept this, you're just hopeless postmodernist. But the human society become different, because once you construct a structure, a mechanism, this is a fact, but this is also perception under certain research, certain ideologies. You can be so wrong. But on the other hand, the impact of your reading of the society was so real. Say for the similar structure conditions, to give a very simple example. If you're Marxist, it's class relations. If you're Weberians, that's called corporatism, intergroup politics, so on and so forth. If you're American pragmatists, it's called stratification. So, but different reading lead to totally different research question, event, evidence gathering, and social programs. So I just give one example. So, and this one of Canadian philosophers called the looping effect. In the social science, a looping kind, in the way that anything you construct, the effect is somehow real. And that can somehow real or semi-real carry different consequences which you cannot expect. And because of our society, the concept, the mechanism created, it's a reality and our construction. And that creates several things very important. Because the first is as the ontological foundation of a structure declines, the kind of social sciences aiming at several diversity become increasingly meaningful. That's why my colleagues at the University of Chicago, most people, I think they are sucks. I don't know why even the University of Chicago people, professor, increasingly no less. Increasingly become boring because even it's great university, but on the other hand, it doesn't matter. Because anything you describe is not reality, is your eye. Of course, you can improve your eye by training, by reading. It doesn't matter. Most important, your eye is limited by life experience. That's why great scholars, they always grow at a great time. And any time that if you have prosperity and peace for more than 2 or 3 generations, scholarship will become boring. Once I told my finding to a classist, and then he was so surprised. My God, they did not realize that's why during the time of Rome, the 5 emperors, the late part of that 5 emperors, the scholarship become increasingly meticulous and boring. And I also use this principle, check out the China. By late part of each time called Kangqian Sheng Shi. There's always in China about the dynasty about 300 years. There's always about 100 years or so peace, prosperity. Late part of the scholarship is also become terrible because the eye of the ruler becomes short and short. And that's created problems. So people always, Chen Licheng study historical memories. People, I always told him the historical memory is you have to ontological position of your research question. The human are a dog with the tail was so short, but with a habit, so bite his own tail. So we just run around to make mistakes, you know. We always know to forget, you're going to make a mistake again. That's a learning thing. But if you want to remember something so hard, you're going to remember a wrong version. But then if you let multiple multiple historical memories, collect memory to compete, you can never guarantee the good memory or the memory you like will prevail. And you can mistake again. So you are doomed. You're doomed. So, but that's why I like, you know, my colleagues, they sometimes get perplexed of my answer. I'm 500 years old, you're chronicle time. I experienced anything from the religious persecution, religious warfare. I saw everything during the Cultural Revolution, just pack the time. That's what, but on the other hand, I have so much respect of those people. They're highly professional, everybody's smart. That's the one thing, but why you look our theory like shit, but you give me such high respect. I said, because the looping effect, 10 different kind of wrong theory is much better than a right theory. And even though I or you can think my theory is right, but if you ontologically unreflecting I'm right, you're wrong. Because there's no way to guarantee your theory is better than other theory, or right theory is more important than wrong theory, because it is a looping effect. So another thing was that as the ontological foundation of structure mechanism, structure decline, kind of social science aiming at searching for highly ad hoc structure mechanism are also become meaningful, which is actually the early part, which I can try to give legitimacy to Western cerebral diversity kind of research. And this really give a lot of anthropological search for small things, and lots of historians search for small cases, smaller cases. It's also important, you know, it's become meaningful. You know, it's so, but I said above trends into kind of a scholar development are called academic tail heavy. And lots of small cacophony of knowledge was produced yearly. You know, many people doing statistics analysis, large data analysis, it's almost garbage in, garbage out. You know that. So, but I think I should finish, but give you several China-specific this is my general carry away. But when I found out to produce this data, found out that tenting development, I kind of really shocked myself. When I finished this, my shocking was that this general carry, I say, even though that the human history has no purpose and teleological stages, and the development of structure mechanism relationship after Big Bang does have a purpose or teleological stages. And the larger pattern of history do not really transcend the nature history. And that was when I produced this theory. Before I produced this theory, I was not expected. I was really kind of shocked by what I found. But now come to the tail heavy. And something I feel disgusted, I make this discussion, this disgusting experience a voice. So, never lost your pure heart. Yeah. So, yeah. And for the second time, maybe six. But when I go to China from the Chinese scholarship, 社会学研究, those top journals, they just produce a bala narrative, create a concept. The concept not like the people like James Scott. This concept is really actually like almost like a good artists, and they really create a new way to look at the things, even though empirically he's wrong. But if you look to think James Scott work as a piece of arts, and he's a great artist. And Chinese usually don't produce this kind of fundamental insight. It's just such an ad hoc concept and ad hoc mechanism. That's why they call it 大河上方故事, 这个故事, 那个故事 story. You know, they don't have they can be boring. And if you go to like one time I go to give a talk in Chinese art schools, and after that they show me 10 plus different workshops. I found so boring because I saw those things somewhere. Ask why. I just give a few examples, like David Harkness, you know, used the iPad painting, or Sophie Tell, the blind. you know, and when you saw that, he basically just asked the people who was born nature blind to describe what is beauty. And then his photographer, he then try to photo the experience with that. Essentially, he's almost doing a perfect controlled experiment, which people see no color, nothing, because they are natural blind. Very few can understand what's beauty. So I can give, of course, I'm not this lecture for art. I can just give these people just examples. Whenever I give example, this is my God, this is hero, my hero. My God, this is my hero. I see the artist, you should have no hero. Every scumbag is myself's hero. You know, you should produce something which is somehow in the very congested world, a new color, new appreciation, new genre, new perspective. Otherwise, you are not artist. It's not, this is just skill. No. So that's some real, but then I also feel in China, for example, I did in the breakfast. When I go to China, found out, my God, I left China in '86. Now, the facial expression of my Chinese colleagues changed. 1960s, I left China. You can see this guy looks like quite a small-minded. This guy is more, but nevertheless, they had one thing in common. They all look like scholars. But now you could ask university, I don't want to mention almost most universities. Hengdian, you know, nobody knows Hengdian. And those, they want to find the 性格演员, and you don't need to go to out Chinese major university. You can find the people, the muscle looks like a killer. Look at the muscle more like, you know, I don't even care a joke because he's gone like the former president of Wu Zhaohui in Zhejiang University. And he actually, you can see his face, his expression more like a local gang. If you ask him, you start to send you you can see his facial muscle, his expression more like this kind of people. And you can some people more like club officials, some people like scholars, some people, and that's because if at the university are not even to train your muscle, they train you, that university is rotten to core. You can see Chinese Zhang Bannian, what's his name? Zhang Bannian, yeah. He's Yuan Shi. You can see his face. Does he look like intellectual? No. If you ask to go to the market to become vendor, pretend vendor, give him a few bucks, pretend vendor for you don't need any. That's it. No, that's it. So that's not one Yuan Shi, one active Yuan Shi. Chinese Yuan Shi all like this. You know, not everybody, lots of people like this, because of how corrupted this academic environment. So, and then the 10th is that the more important ad hoc mechanism in the society, I got the heavy detail, the dominance of fancy, complex, unrealistic languages in the administrative, political, and academic life. And it's not, it's not I want to in any way to insult one of my colleague at Zhejiang University. It only happens in China, they have a 5年计划. They need it called 14-5. It's a 14, 50-year plan. So including my social department, we need to make a plan. And I refuse to make those kind of plans. I think it's stupid. And then in the end, ask the party boss, the secretary, do it for me. And they are doing it for me, and they only allow me to give a 10 minutes talk. And I just go to the hell. I talk myself, you know. But this is not me. This is from a 哲学社会. It's what's the historical mission. And after finish, I happen to be, they land me up in quite a late stage. I just go, my talk is start like this. My God, I listen to your talk, I was so moved. When Chinese and United States were in a competition, I don't think China needs any university. You just need a Zhejiang University. And I don't think China needs so many years to surpass the United States. 5 years enough. Because what's your vision? But if you reached one university can 碾压 United States will disappear on the ground because you have slogans. So this is the reason I select, because in the end, I was so fascinated by the linguistic game they play. I started take photos. I take photos, but that's too late. And until I start taking photos, I'm already found, my God, it's interesting data. And it's already, I did happen to be, then I found out that this is a nicer one. But on the other hand, how beautiful you can see, 立足中国, of course, pretended. These people want to get a green card, get out. You know, and 借鉴国外，把握当代面向未来 everything. then go to 中国实际、中国产的中国问题、重大工程、重大项目学 and this is real because that they want to get money, get slots, you know. And 中国社会的特色社会科学考语体系 and that's from Xi Jinping, which indeed it's right. Chinese should have their own social science, ontology, and epistemological distinction. But unless you found your own particular uniqueness on ontological, epistemology level, then you develop your own methodology uniqueness. That's American pragmatism, become distinctive than the rest European sensibilities. And Chinese are not, they just because they're the 中国社会考语体系, just they write A 中国社会体系 B 中国社会考语体系 Today is dark 中国社会体系 Today there's a ring outside the 中国社会考语体系 It's anything what they write. So basically China's already overproduced millions of 中国社会考语体系 because Xi Jinping wants to produce. But on the other, it's important. But now you can see linguistic game starts. But this is a really not a fancy one because I happen to be I did not take I see some 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 they really go to the top. You can see, but this on the 两肩两体两翼三股三心三足 it's what kind of your brain but behind this is an endless small ad hoc causalities. Linguistic, it's all linguistic causality. You create a new so and it's really so so in a way that they almost make a very serious academic endeavor become turn into a very ad hoc linguistic game. And the so-called 14th 5-year plan, at least in Georgia University, is a bunch of stupid guys doing linguistic experimentation for something totally ad hoc. They are not linguist anthropologists. They are the people, the kind of stupid guy, but maybe a good linguist anthropologist can use as a data to analyze. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Zhao, for the fascinating talk. I think it is really inspiring and about the fundamental way of sociological thinking. I believe we have an audience here. We also have an audience online. So now we still have some time for questions and comments. Do we have any questions? We can take some questions from our floor first, and then we can have a look at about our online audience. Li Chen.
Okay. Thank you very much for the wonderful talk. And I have learned a lot personally when I was working at Georgia University. So this is a good time for me to rehear some of the thoughts by Professor Zhao Dingxing. So I have a question about the tail-heavy phenomena. You mentioned this, especially in China, that there are a lot of tail-heavy phenomena and ad hoc mechanism. So I was wondering about the relationship between regime type and the ad hoc phenomena, because it seems like in authoritarian regimes, if the decision-making process is more like controlled or focused by a small group of people, then this group of people's decision will create more ad hoc mechanism. While in democracy, if this is based on legal rational procedure, it seems like relies more on general mechanism. So I was wondering if this is right, or what's the relationship between regime type and the tail-heavy relationship? Thank you.
I don't think it's necessary. I think regime type does matter here, but not necessary. Deng Xiaoping certainly know how to use general mechanisms. And I remember in the Manchu Qing dynasty, when Guangxu and Qianlong, they had a reign, each of them had for 60 years. If you read after they become an emperor for 30 years, of those young people just pass examination with full of ambition, except no life experience. Just talk to Guangxu, something have this idea that Guangxu and often gave them a counter example to show you are too naive, because he made mistakes early on. So, and the regime, and also there's a general trend, say United States And suddenly, if you compare 1960 and 1980s, when I went to Canada to study, to now, in the last 30 plus years, United States, the ad hoc causality become much more important than it was today, you know. And even University of Chicago, suppose it's should be it's famous or infamous for, you know, centered on the power of the faculties. It's a faculty-run university. Lots of basically the ad hoc mechanism was so, you know, so despised in a way. Like, remember, I want to have a reimbursement in Chicago. When I go in, I get scared because you need to play. You don't need to present any receipt. You just tell them you lost this, lost that, doesn't matter. At least your credit card. If there's income, because 1930s, sometimes that's the early mid 90s, I actually stay in mixed mode. Use cash credit card. You just tell you where you are. They tell. And I remember I was never get used to this kind of reimbursement practice. I just asked, what about I used all my grants money just for fun or something? And you need to put a little bit more check. And that's what the secretary told me. If as a university professor, University of Chicago professor, if you do this kind of thing, 10 or 20 years, your mind was not focused on scholarship. Other people get the Nobel Prize, become chair professor. You are not able to get tenure. And you're stupid. Use this money, you know. And then, but in case you forgot to use, because they give us a special credit card, use wrong credit card, treat a dinner party, it happen to be your friends, not for business, not for academic, so what? You need to have this decency. Make mistake, we don't care. You know, and this is a kind of thing which allows us, inspires, gives you are special. But today, University of Chicago, still reimbursement is still very, very easy, pretty much. Like my daughter now, she was new faculty over there. She was scared. My God, the money she got, I said, I can use whatever I want. And that's scary. I said, I told her, it's time to train you, self-discipline, you know. So, and but on the other hand, the University of Chicago certainly there's so much like in the past, every year they need a faculty report. I use like 5 minutes. Now I need to use their half day. You know, they ask more, and they have a computer program. You click, you know, you learn the software in the time. You know. Then they change the software every year. So, and so this is a general institutionalization process. It's a general. But on the other hand, regime nature doesn't matter, but it's in a more complex fashion. Say, suppose in Mao's time, you do see the ad hoc mechanisms dominant, but not as much as today. Because behind bureaucracy, there's ideology, there's a mission. It's only a bureaucracy lost the ideology, lost the mission. They become a running dog of regularity. They create regularity, sometimes lick ass on the top, sometimes for self-protection, sometimes just doing things I want to do, sometimes, and now you can see the ad hoc become a periphery. It's basically, it's a highly legalist state, lost the check balance of either Taoism or communism or Confucianism. You see the bona fide legalism. This is a problem. Okay, but it's not simple because, yeah.
Okay, do we have any questions? Tony here.
Yeah, thanks very much, Professor Zhao, for your fascinating talk. I noticed that in one slide you mentioned that, you know, when ad hoc mechanism dominates, there will be more bureaucrats and fewer politicians. Yeah. Do you think, I mean, this is probably a classical agency structure problem. Do you think some charismatic leader or like strong leader can, using his or her own agency, to open up a new phase or a new age where general mechanism becomes important again? And to what extent he or she can do that, like Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, or Deng Xiaoping? Like, would our age have such kind of politicians?
I think you can, but on the other hand, whatever you do, a key agent that can change the structure, break a lot of things down, allow the general mechanism come back a bit, then start the institutionalization process. Ad hoc mechanism become important again. And Mao hated this so much. That's why he started the Cultural Revolution. And when you start the Cultural Revolution, of course, I'm in any way endorse Cultural Revolution. But on the other hand, I had a really certain level of appreciation of him, because that's why in 1974, Mao said the Cultural Revolution should come every 7-8 years. Because Mao really want this ad hoc causality even still in a very early stage. Because Mao really did not want every time you start something, and Liu Shaoqi sent to 工作组, the work team to supervise. Immediately the bureaucracy logic kicks in. And Liu Shaoqi did not understand that. That's why in the last meeting with Liu Shaoqi and Mao, Liu Shaoqi asked Mao that, I know, and Mao said you should rest for a few months and read a few things. And the final books are really important. Mao asked him to read the Huainanzi, a very eclectic Huang Lao, Dao sent, Wu Wei, and ask him to read Diderot's mechanical, historical materialism, and several books are all actually attack this over-legalized understanding of the society. But on the other hand, Mao was not able to read of himself, because he still judged Chinese history as a fighting between legalist and Confucianist, which I don't think he really believed. But that's the important. If there's a charisma, as powerful, as revolutionary to the last blood like a Mao, he cannot violate this reinstitutionalization process. Immediately is the problem.
Okay, Mimi.
Good morning, Professor Zhao. As the Professor Jianhua said, that we really read a lot of works in his courses, and we know you are the very brilliant, academic idol for us. Yes. So you're the person work out from the books, all the papers. So I cherished this opportunity to ask one question. Maybe this question is a little bit more macroscopic, but I want to know that there is a saying goes as in the methodology part, maybe it is more stronger in the economics, no matter it's macro or micro, or the econometrics part. So it means that it's weaker in the sociology, political science, or even a communication part. So I want to know what's your comment about this, this saying. Yes, and
what's weak? What do you mean by?
Well,
what is weak? Could you repeat?
the methodology.
Okay.
Yes, the methodology.
Become weaker. Okay.
Yeah. And what's the trend of this methodology goes in the future? I want to know. So okay. Can you give some comments or judgment or share with us?
Okay.
With us. Thank you.
Okay. Actually, I start from mathematics, do mathematical modeling, so on, so. But on the other hand, I can always form attention. Originally, when I was a child, or when I was adolescent, or even I'm around 30, I still did not understand. I always thought that mathematics is the most difficult discipline. Of course, it's not. It's a language. Physics is difficult, and then chemistry is easy. Biology is even easy, and then social science, and sociology is easier. Econ is easier. Then society is even easier, and anthropology is the easiest. And that's I had similar ideas, but it's wrong. But it's wrong because later I found out that if a discipline, something you study, it's easy to create a measure, create certain criteria to study, because this topic is a simpler. And then you have to create a phenomenon that a simple topic are easy to set a bar, set a standard. It's not that econ had a more sophisticated methodology. And they set a certain, the initial learning bar is more difficult. Once you go in, you just become scoundrel, do whatever you do, garbage in, garbage out. But in anthropology, in social sciences, because it's so hard to set a bar. If you were, say, for example, I'm in econ, I can claim I'm a rational choice. And do game theoretic models and put all the social science, social structure conditions through backdoor into the economic analysis through what called externality. But we sociology cannot do that, because to my knowledge, that if you let price mechanism become dominant, it may not be necessary to produce the best society. Secondly, the society is involved hundreds of thousands of mechanisms. Why you want to place this mechanism at the center? The rest you treat as externality. This is not the world. This is your eye. And also I know that I cannot always just use rational choice-based analysis, even though I know rational choice is part of human faculty, because human has also emotions, other things. And I also know the importance of rationality in a society is a variable. And I also know, not like econ people. Econ people know that every mechanism you can all downgrade, that you can find out is always in human action, human decision, like free rider problem, or like a price mechanism, free rider problem is always related to human decisions. But I know many social mechanisms at work level as emerging property, regardless of your decision. Your demography of human follow Marx's equation. Animals also follow Marx's equation. Single species development is all exponential unless checked by other conditions. That's mechanism. So in this case, though, I found out the people, the best econ people, when I talk to them, Chicago does Nobel laureate, I found to talk to children. They don't understand. But on the other example, because they're simple. They treat the society in a very biased manner, allow them to build up a very solid science, to do deep analysis, which is totally irrelevant, quite irrelevant to reality. So that's why, you should not, because any discipline which is easy often means it's with the topic you deal is more difficult. And the criteria to set and the basic training that within that department, if you train people in anthropology, do statistics analysis, they will kill you. You can't, maybe statistics analysis is good for analyzing certain human behaviors, not others. So it's not because the discipline is more easy, that those people are dumber. Because the difficult topic, the lower the entrance barrier. That's the tragedy of the human world.
Okay, thank you, Professor Zhao. And I do have one question for Professor Zhao. I found this structure, this mechanism analysis is fascinating, but I'm just curious about in sociology in earlier times, we also talk about a structural functionalism. I wonder whether this your current version of structure mechanism analysis will have the same type of advantage, but also at the same type of problems which may faced by the structural analysis of structural functionalism. Thank you.
I think not at all. And I think because I was a biologist. When I was a biologist, we learned from structural functionalism. It works. Say, for example, in the undergraduate, we learn what's the definition of the species, what's the definition between plant, animal. And then because as a recursion, we needed to go back to dormitory, start discuss. And remember, one day we debate, try to come out with different definition of what is animal. And some people say the animal don't do photosynthesis. Animal have this. And there was and one student was so fed up, was like, go sleep, it's too late. All the animal had a mouse. I found out originally I think this guy's kidding, but on the other, this is good definition. Why? But animal, once you cannot do photosynthesis, you need something to take food. And then if you think those are one cell species like amoeba, they change. Amoeba changes their shape, mainly they capture something and they take that thing into their body and they can get rid of something which is not useful. And the whole cell is a mouse. It's there indeed. That's of course that's not because even animal plant, it's actually the distinction is not that clear, and there's always some fuzziness. So in biology, everything that you can indeed through function to judge the structure because they follow Darwinian principle. If that function did not follow the structure principle, and that structure has no function, that animal going to die. That animal going to extinct. But in human world, we are self-justifying biomass. We create very lots of stupid structure like this. This, I think, one of accounting student is a leading artist after Soviet Union come to power. Many of those people trained and learned from Paris, come back, create a generation of wonderful art. Even today, we are great admired. This what kind of structure? It's called new human. And the structure based on a lot of ad hoc causalities. So in the sense that you can justify your success, your survival, your existence by I serve certain function. But in reality, you exist simply because of domination. So this is so it's because we are self-justifying by man. But on the other hand, that it doesn't mean every structure in society has no function. The function changes as a variable. That's why in my talk, I prepare another slides. And you can measure whether society, the tail is too heavy by at least 3 criteria. I think they're more than 3. First, structure function measurement. Whether the heavier the tail, the more the importance of ad hoc mechanism society, which is too much, and then you see the great tension between structure and the function. You create lots of structures, no function. Just like in China, the Chinese government really want to find every ways to try to promote a structure, to promote a scholarship. But in the end, the promoter of those scholars, even the face don't look like a scholar anymore. So another is called the mechanism. The heavier the tail, the more importance of ad hoc mechanism will be in your social life. In China, what determines 把个院士、长江学者 anything get it's 场外功夫. Yeah. Which you call some people, tell somebody doing something, it's not your scholarship anymore. And that means tail is too heavy. And behavioral measurement, the heavier the tail, the high level of dominance and of opportunities behavior in social life. People have no long-term profile. They just do whatever ad hoc methods get benefit. That's it. So you do have a measurement. So that's all the 3 mean that structure and function is not related. The structure function relationship in a society, in a way, it's a variable. It's not a constant. Yeah.
Thank you for your inspiration. I want to get a bit more of this, if you like, because I would say that authoritarian political systems would try to stamp out ad hocness in the society.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that? And then the second thing,
stamp out,
eliminate ad hocness. Right? Our authoritarian systems, they want to control things in the society. So, as I understand that the ad hocness is the thing that authoritarian systems don't want. But if you have loop mechanisms in the society, you would say that even the attempt to stamp out ad hocness would create its own ad hocness. Would you buy that? Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree. But on the other hand, I tend to be not to overemphasize, but modern authoritarianism is peculiar kind of authoritarianism. And authoritarianism suddenly was weaponed by modern technologies, modern control technology, modern communication technologies, and actually weaponed by a mission. And that mission is often teleological. And that's very different from a traditional authoritarianism, like Chinese, those emperors, they would just want to maintain the power. So once they just want to maintain the power, for them, for example, how much do they want to stand up a difference? Like China and Roman empires, and that again, face talk was more relevant in the afternoon. They found out that how much they want to stamp out the variation differences really related to what kind of state religion they sponsor. They do want an ideology or religion to serve as a base of legitimacy. But once you get that, promote that religion as a state ideology, you start hijacked by this nature of that ideology. So in a way, is that often, and that I'm not, that's why I wanted this, maybe this authoritarianism and their stamp out, it could be it's a pseudo causation. real causation is the nature of ideology. As you can see, some ideology, secular ideology with zero-sum evangelical nature, they stand out difference much more than those kind of authoritarianism don't have this nature. And if, say, for example, internationally, what American did, Trump did, Trump did a few days, they get rid of bad dance, so on and so forth. And many of American things do, even though internally they try to create a liberal, certain diversity, but externally you can see they try to stamp out the differences. And that the standout is based on those kind of liberal, on fundamental liberalism, I could maybe call it. And then again, behind which is still this kind of zero-sum evangelical mentality. And so does China too. Even though China don't have a clear vision called communism, but those kind of zero-sum evangelical nature of the understanding of the world, indeed, through secular ideology, we call it communism or Marxism, into a Chinese way of thinking, which is never Chinese. Never Chinese. So I think we're actually more related to nature of the ideology. I do see some authoritarian regime, they don't care. They don't care, or they care less at least.
Okay. I think thank you very much for all the Professor Zhao's fascinating talk and also for all the questions. I think because of time, we may not be able to accommodate more questions, but I would like to invite all of you to take a group photo with Professor Zhao and give us a great applause to Professor Zhao's fascinating talk. 好了，我们一起照个相好吗？我们一起照个相。
行行行，
好，我们你
我坐哪
坐那边，坐那个位置好了，我们一起照个相。